David, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh man, thanks for inviting me.
Well, as I was telling you kind of on text earlier, we had a brief conversation a long time ago. I don't expect you to remember this when you played in Toronto about punk rock. So I kind of feel like this is my way of following up that conversation all these years later.
Man, do you remember what band I was playing with in Toronto? Because it could
It was a solo set.
It must have been.
I was trying to think. I was there to see you play, but I think you were opening for someone else, like maybe John Frusciante or something, or like I don't know.
Man, it couldn't have been. Was it Super Furry Animals? Maybe I don't know if we played Canada. I can't remember.
Maybe it was. I don't know. But you did a solo set, and then we talked backstage. It was at this club called the Horseshoe, which is sort of a legendary club here in Toronto, kind of like our. I don't know, I guess our CBGBs, but even more, kind of epic history, as far as time goes. But yeah, we talked briefly about punk rock. So I feel like now I'm armed with a lot more knowledge about your resume. So I feel like I can be a little more
inquisitive. Cool. What, do you remember what instrumentation I had then? Because I might be able to piece it together. Like, I don't have a memory of it, but
it was just you solo on stage with just a guitar.
Oh, okay. Guitar and vocals?
Yeah.
Or guitar instrumental? Okay.
It was guitar and vocals.
No idea.
Maybe some instrumental songs.
Oh, man, I don't remember.
Anyway, well, don't worry. Please do not worry, because I assure you, I was not in any way but a Punisher back then. Now I feel like I'm a skilled interviewer.
A Punisher? In what way?
Well, I don't know if you're familiar with that term, but I play in a band myself, and that's kind of like, I guess, become, or has, in the last few years, kind of become band lingo for, well, I say it as someone that self-identifies as one in my past. So, but it's someone who just meets a musician and just has to let them know how much of a fan they are over an extended period of time.
Oh, I love the Punishers, if it's, within reason, I guess.
Yes, within reason.
I know what you mean. Yeah. The only time it sucks is if you're you can see friends that you haven't seen in 10 years on the other side of the room or waving at you and you're like, oh my God, I can't talk to a stranger right now. But
that is to be the Punisher. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess, I know what a Punisher is. Yeah, that's great.
Well, there's actually a shirt made by Perry Schall, who's a graphic designer in Philadelphia, but also a merch guy for a number of years for a number of different bands and tour manager. But it's a Death to Punisher shirt with a tongue with a dagger stabbed through it. So not everyone is as loving of the Punisher as yourself.
Especially touring solo, where you're just driving yourself around, you're just by yourself. You look forward to those kind of conversations because otherwise you're on your own, and this gets boring. But yeah, with Tortoise, I remember we developed a hand signal, or it didn't really last, but that meant get me out of the conversation I'm having. It could be a Punisher, or it could be a business person that you don't want to talk to, or just any conversation. And it was if you scratched your head using your thumb with your pinky pointed out, that meant come over and be oh, we got to load out or something, and you'd be oh, I'm sorry, I have to go. But it never worked. Every time I would be vigorously scratching my head with my thumb, nobody happened to be looking. So I should bring that back. But it depends on other people being attentive.
Yes.
So
you need to rely on the awareness of your bandmates and road crew at that time.
And now I've just told everybody about it, so I have to come up with a new signal.
I remember when I was a kid, I think it was NoFX had a roadie that I remember looked strikingly like Fat Mike. And I'm sure it was just to kind of distract, the kids that would come up after the show to try and talk to them.
That's a good idea.
Decoys. Decoys is the way to play.
Yeah, set up decoys.
But we're not here to talk about decoys. We're not here to talk about Fat Mike. We're here to talk about your journey into punk. And I got to start this off the way I start them all off, which is, David, how did you get into punk? Do you remember the first time you ever came across the genre?
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, it was from my older brother, which is I think is a classic scenario. You know, having an older sibling that was into it. Because I was like a metalhead kid, and I was really into like the most extreme metal I could find at the time. You know, and my brother was always into punk and new wave. And we always would get in these arguments, you know, like he'd be like, "Oh, your shit sucks," you know, they're all idiots, and I'd be like, "Oh, your shit sucks. They don't know how to play their instruments and all this. Like, at least like these guys can solo, you know." But the like they, but you know, I he did like he'd play like the Clash and Dead Kennedys and Pistols and stuff and B-52, like all this stuff in the car in like the early 80s when he drive me to school. And I liked all that stuff because they said bad words and they were, to me, they were funny. Like Friggin' in the Riggin' by the Pistols was a funny song. And like their version of My Way. And what was the other, like all the Dead Kennedy stuff I liked because it was funny. Like I Kill Children was I thought was great, and
Mm-hmm.
Stealing People's Mail, all those songs. But I didn't take it that seriously until I think I realized until like I discovered hardcore, like the really fast shit. Because I wanted like the metal that was around at the time. Like I was into Venom when that black metal record first came out, and like I didn't know anybody else that had even heard of Venom. And Slayer was still an obscure band. Even Metallica, like there weren't that many people that really. I didn't have friends that were into that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Merciful Fate, I was really into them.
Where were you hearing about that stuff? Because it is, yeah, you're right. Like it's really obscure at that point for, a kid to find that stuff.
Yeah, and especially like growing up in Louisville, Kentucky,
Mm-hmm.
which is you would think is like devoid of any like modern culture or whatever, but it was the record store. It was they always put all those records in the import section, like for some reason, even if they weren't
Yeah.
imports. Like all the punk and metal stuff, really hard stuff went in the import section, and I just bought stuff based on the covers, like the more satanic or offensive it looked, I'd buy it
Yeah.
or steal it or whatever. I was a little klepto. But then, yeah, I think it was the like metal started to not feel like fast enough. Like I just wanted shit to be faster, and that's when I don't even remember how I first heard like what the deciding record was, but it was I just realized that hardcore was way more awesome, and it pressed my emotional buttons.
Mm-hmm.
Like it wasn't just a joke or novelty. Like it was like like Minor Threat had lyrics that were I could relate with. I always felt out of step with the world. Like
Mm-hmm.
and so I kind of abandoned all that metal. Well, I mean, I was sort of in between for a while, but I really got into hardcore, and I had that DRI 7-inch that had like a billion songs on it, or
22
Dirty Rotten
song,
EP.
7-inch. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was the fastest shit I'd ever heard. And some Gangrene singles, I loved Gangrene, I'd like felt like I'd found my home, and once I like getting into that, like there's a tight knit punk community in Louisville at the time where, you could listen to all different kinds of music, but it was all like a group of like outcasts, sort of, and it was sort of like a dysfunctional family, but I felt like I belonged to something finally, like I found like freaks like me, and so I fully like and then at some point I shaved my head and like went the full like punk route, and like hit all my metal records. Like I was embarrassed to admit that I liked AC/DC for a short time. Then I realized that punk is actually a huge umbrella, and you can listen to AC/DC or Robert Johnson or the Smiths and still be punk. Like
Yeah. Well, and AC/DC is like one of those bands that also I think, gets the pass because like, there's a power there.
totally, yeah. But I still wanted to be part of the purist like hardcore scene because I was a new guy,
Yeah.
But I guess and like the new guys sort of got hazed for being like, oh, you're just a poser, you know, like it, because there were kids that went through phases, and then next year they'd be in a reggae phase and smoking weed and not hanging out with punks anymore because they had dreads, you know, like. But I'm a lifer for sure. Like, shit, what was I going to say? It was something about like punk. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I guess also because I had spent so much time practicing guitar and like and learning how to shred like those '80s metal dudes. That when I got into the punk scene, I became like a valuable person because I could actually play my instrument, you know, and like and so I ended up in everybody's band, like, and I played drums too. So yeah, I felt like not popular, but I felt just accepted and wanted, you know, for the first time.
Well, like I was gonna say, like when you started playing guitar, was that like, did you have any metal bands before you came into Solution Unknown?
I mean, I started off playing drums, and I got my first drum set when I was 13, which I don't know what year that is, to be honest. Like, I was born in '68. I can't do the math right now. But it was, and then the next year I got a guitar, like an electric guitar, and I just kind of just picked it up really fast. Like, it seemed super easy.
Yeah.
And then I started, and then by the time I was 16, I immediately started playing in bands when I got my guitar at 14. Like, I ended up, I started playing guitar with this band that of like sort of rednecks where we we just did like Rush covers and Zeppelin covers and stuff. So I was really into it. But then we got signed by like a talent agency, and they told us to play top 40. And I just, you know, I didn't know what being in a band was like. So I ended up like at 14 just having to dress a certain way for playing when we played a prom, and like having to learn all the top 40 hits, which was really funny. Like, I found one of our old set lists. We'd play 4 sets a night, and it was all like Loverboy and Night Ranger, Prince, just all these songs. Yeah, at the time I hated playing those songs. You know, I only looked forward to the parts where I could show off. But and I was the same. Like, I just stood there. You know, I didn't ever move or, you know, I would never put on a show. But then, but I hated playing those songs. But now when I hear those songs, and I still remember the guitar parts, and I think that was actually a pretty good education. You know, like having just a wider, like knowing the current pop stuff as well as like the more like deeper cuts of weirder bands or whatever. Like, it was good for me.
Well, I imagine also as a musician, probably stretched your kind of like your parameters and like, you know, your styles and everything. Like, it took you kind of to different places.
Yeah, it did, but it was always like places where I didn't want to go. Like, I mean, I wasn't happy playing, you know, Yes covers and stuff or whatever or even like the Romantics, like that stuff. It just seemed I didn't feel anything. Like, I didn't like the band at that point. And so when I got into punk, and they all thought I was crazy because I was just getting weird haircuts and mohawks and stuff, and I just, you know, I realized that this was a scene playing, and they had bands and they were playing the kind of music I listened to, you know. And so when I left that band, I just went full tilt into the punk world. Like,
when you said your brother was like a new wave kind of guy, was he like listening to bands like the End Tables? Was he in like that kind of stuff, or is there like other stuff happening in locally?
He wasn't. He was kind of like, well, he was like a loner guy too.
Yeah.
So I think he had maybe 1 or 2 friends that were into that kind of music, and I don't think he went to that many shows or anything. Like, I think he did it. It's kind of like this, like on Stranger Things, the older brother that turns him on to the Clash. Like, it was kind of like that thing. Like, he's not really like he didn't look like a punk or anything. He didn't dress like one, but he just liked the music. So he wasn't really involved in the Louisville scene. He must have known that there was one, but
Yeah.
I don't know how involved in it he was. He passed away when I was 16, so I never got to ask him those questions.
I'm sorry, man.
But it's all good. It's a long time ago.
From to kind of awkwardly, I guess, transition back to talking about other things. Was there like a point where you found yourself going to shows that were actually? What was your very first show you went to, or concert even?
Man, it was the first punk show I went to was I saw Maurice, which is a band I played in later, when Brian McMahon from Slint was playing guitar with them, and Malignant Growth, which were a local Louisville band. They're incredible hardcore band. Like to this day, Ian Mackay's because they played 2 shows with Minor Threat, and Ian just is like, yeah, Malignant Growth were like the best hardcore band. And they have really limited. I think they only recorded in a studio like 3 songs, but there's like cassettes of their song. They were such a good band. I mean,
whoa, I've never heard of this band.
Malignant Growth, man. I'll have to send you some of their stuff.
Oh, I'd love to hear it.
It is fucking awesome. Yeah, I mean, they were all really big dudes. Like the singer was a high school football star, but he was also into poetry and sang for Malignant Growth, and the guitarist and bass player were brothers, but they were both garbage men, and they lived on the south end, which is like I guess they call it like the white trash part of town. Mm-hmm. And they were like big, intimidating guys to begin with, and their music is so muscular, man. It's just so good. And the guitar player was a huge influence on me because he would play harmonics with distortion on his guitar, like there were melodies. And, we ended up stealing that idea or not stealing it, but it was like an acceptable thing to do in Slint.
Yeah.
Like playing, like a whole riff could be just harmonics on the guitar, which I didn't realize was, yeah.
No, go on. Sorry.
No, I just didn't realize it was that unusual until people told me later. There's that song Rhoda that's almost all harmonics on the guitar, or the whole ending is, but that was pretty normal to us because Malignant Growth had already done it, But yeah, that was my first show, and I remember when Maurice plugged in, they were so awesome then. And when they first plugged in and they started, it was like the roof caved in. Like to me, everybody was slamming, and it was in this little basement of a house, and it was. That's when I was like, "This is my world," I'm so into this.
What was that like? Yeah, was it like mainly a kind of a house show scene then, or was it like all ages venues?
There weren't all ages. There's always been a venue problem in Louisville.
Mm-hmm.
They just don't last long. So that's like the ongoing problem is like, where do bands play? So house parties is like a really normal way to see a band. So yeah, there was like an abandoned house we called the Punk House because people were squatting in there, mm-hmm. and they'd have shows in the basement, and that's where I saw them.
So when did you kind of start playing in punk bands?
It was almost immediately. I think it was my older brother's friend was this guy named Mike Bakayu. We call him Mike B, and he was the punk guy. And after my brother died, me and Mike became really good friends, and he kind of took me under his wing and turned me on to all this music. And he had a band called Solution Unknown. There was barely a band. It was more of a concept, and we started playing together, and then I joined Maurice, and I just immediately started playing with everybody. Like if somebody's vocalist couldn't make a show, I would take their lyrics and be the vocalist, or if their drummer couldn't make a show, I'd play drums, and I'd learn all their songs and play drums. Like, I was just like the go-to guy if you needed somebody quick.
Did you ever play in Big Deal?
No, I was friends with all those guys. How do you know about them?
Dude, I love
That's
that
crazy.
record so much. That 45 is awesome.
Wow, man, that's really cool. Yeah, they were like an East End. They were a little younger than me too, but I definitely like hung out with them and like did drugs with them and stuff. They're like that was that was really that was a good scene. There was Big Deal. Man, Todd Brashear from Slint may have even played with them at some point. Maybe that's what you're thinking of, like a member of Slint playing with them, because Todd
Yeah.
was part of that world.
I don't know, just because when you said you played with every band, I know they were like on that same label, Self Destruct Records, which you got like Solution Unknown.
Right.
That's the first release they put out, I think.
Yeah, that's right.
But it's an incredible label. Like, and I think that label documents, like a lot of bands that came out of Louisville that, like there was like a good run of like, even starting before that with the bands like the End Tables, but like consistently.
Yeah.
Like, right up until the 90s, there's just like such a good run of bands documented on that label.
I've always wondered why Louisville had this great music scene for that they had punk bands in the 70s that were really good.
Mm-hmm.
They had like great bands in the 80s, like punk bands or off the radar bands. And, I always wondered, like, why Louisville, not like Lexington or Cincinnati or some other city?
Yeah.
And I feel like there must be something in the water, like but there was an art school in Louisville that a lot of the early punks, like from the 70s, came out of, and they would go to New York and come back with cool records, and I feel like they must have had something to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
Like that must have had something to do with it, because it's kind of baffles me like how we're like Louisville's as isolated as any other town, but somehow we always had these bands that got it, that understood it. Like, yeah, Self Destruct is a great label. That's Mike B's label. And he's put out some really cool stuff. The compilations, the Louisville Sluggers ones. I think he's planning on putting out the studio stuff from Malignant Growth.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, which it's about time that it was. I think 3 of the songs showed up on this pretty obscure hard or punk compilation called the Master Tapes Volume 3.
Oh yeah, like I think I have Master Tapes Volume 1, which is like Zero Boys and like it's like a Midwest type comp.
Totally, yeah. Zero Boys were Indianapolis, I think. They were, and Malignant Growth have 3 great songs on Volume 3. If you ever find a copy of that,
now it's on the want list. It's there.
It's a double album.
Yeah, it's there with the Solution Unknown 7-inch, and now it's I've got a very huge want list of records.
I can send you the Solution Unknown 7-inch. I mean, I think I have some extra copies. I mean, it was just a Xerox cover. Anybody could bootleg it.
Well, we will talk later on about this, because believe me, that is a record that I've looked for a long time, because I think, it's that's the thing about Louisville, like you were saying, it's like, and I don't think I've ever even been there, but I know just being a fan of various things that have come out of there, like, yeah, like it's a city that definitely punches above its weight when it comes to like putting out alternative punk, whatever type music, like, even like that whole, I think it seems like everything's like, there's always ambitious record label type people there, be it like, you're saying like Mike B with Self Destruct, or like the people with Initial Records, like there just seems like there's like an ambition.
Slam Deck and all that, the straight edge thing.
Yeah.
It's true. But I mean, that was kind of the norm. I feel like back then was that if we didn't expect any label to want to put out this kind of music, so it was just start your own label. Like play a bunch of shows and save the money to print some vinyl. Like That was just the way you just did it yourself. It wasn't like we were consciously going for a DIY thing. It's just there was no one was interested.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have any other options.
Were there a lot of bands coming through, or who would you guys play with? Just mainly like local bands?
Well, yeah, with Solution Unknown and Maurice, like we played with a lot of cool bands actually, like because bands would come through Cincinnati and sometimes they'd go to Louisville too, but Cincinnati's only an hour and a half away, so we would play shows there a lot, opening for Dag Nasty or fuck TSOL or I don't know like name a band and we probably played with them that was on tour back then. Like, we managed to see a lot of good bands and play with a lot of good bands, even though there wasn't really a regular venue.
Mm-hmm.
It was, I don't know how we pulled that off.
What was the scene like that was like, as far as kids going to these shows, like you mentioned, doing drugs with the big deal guys, like it doesn't seem like it was a very straight edge kind of scene then.
No, there was, there wasn't, at least, at that time in like 84 and 85, 86, like pretty much all of the 80s, there was almost no real, I mean, if you were straight edge, it wasn't a big deal. Like, but there wasn't a scene for sure. You were more of an anomaly. I mean, tobacco and bourbon are like tobacco's a cash crop in Kentucky, and
Mm-hmm.
and bourbon is made, like great bourbon's made there. So everybody was smoking and drinking and smoking weed and stuff. It seemed like it to me. And I guess I did to a certain extent.
Well, yeah, like I think that's reflected in the music too, coming out of there. It's like not like, like there's certain scenes where, like the restrictions placed on extracurricular activity seems to kind of define the art a little bit too.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it was such a small scene. Like, if I played a show back then and with Solution Unknown or something, I would know almost everybody there. Yeah, you mean you would just know who they were? They'd be sort of a familiar face. So, and it was like, if you like, it would be a goth person or everyone was into so many different types of music. It was just, it wasn't. There was no real like unified scene unless it was like a scene of weirdos, just weird people. Like if you're like, it wasn't. I don't think it's as restricted as it is now. Like,
Mm-hmm.
like you could only be like only the hardcore kids went to hardcore shows, or only the pop punk kids went to pop punk shows, or
Yeah. Well, I guess
it was
you have to have like the population at those shows to make that like feasible. Like if it's not a huge scene population wise, you can't really afford to restrict yourself like that.
yeah. And I think people just liked anything that was different.
Yeah.
One cool thing about Louisville that I did notice was later, like after moving out, was that it seemed like at least my crowd of people, they weren't easily satisfied, like, and really cynical. So if you sounded like Dead Up, like another band, you were kind of made fun of, or if you like just so it kind of kept you on your toes to like be unique, be different,
Yeah.
But also like if you went too arty or too far out there, you had to have something to ground you. Like it had to have like you had to have something that was like kept it like street level or so, whatever, where it wasn't that far out. You had to have your AC/DC moments or something like, or you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
There's always somebody that was just going to tear you apart. That was going to bring you back to earth. If you went too far out.
You've got a lane
So
that you got to stick in.
Yeah. I mean, even Solution Unknown, like a lot of my friends didn't like us because they just thought we were ripping off Minor Threat, which we wanted to, obviously, but we wished we were as good as them. But it was just a fun band, really. It was just like we just had a good time. We didn't care what people thought. So.
Did you guys tour at all, or like, is it just because you put out an LP and a 7-inch, right? Like there is like and a demo, and there's quite a bit of recorded output.
Yeah, no, we never toured. We never even thought about touring. I don't know why. Um, yeah, we just played locally or like in the like Indiana, Ohio area. Um, but yeah, it was just like a local thing. It was just a way to have fun because we were bored, in our town. Like, and I was doing Slint at the same time. Like I think that 7-inch came out in '86, and Tweez was recorded in '87. So I was doing Solution Unknown and Slint at the same time, which were two vastly different bands.
Also, King Kong, like, well, because like Tweez comes out in '89, right? Which is the same time King Kong comes out. So I was going to say, we're like those bands must overlap.
Um, oh yeah, King Kong totally overlapped. Not really with Solution Unknown, but with like Ethan came to our shows, but he wouldn't. He wasn't like King Kong was. He quit Slint after Tweez was recorded, so that must have been the end of '87 when he quit.
Okay.
And then '88, he started King Kong, which started off as a fanzine, a really funny one, and then he formed a band, and and we all played with him too, like all the Slint guys for sure.
Oh, so that's like, and so like on that Homestead record, it's you guys play as well.
Uh, I play bongos on that. I mean, I think that's the only thing I play. But like the first 7-inch, the movie star one.
Yeah,
I don't know if you've heard that.
That's the single I have.
Right. Yeah, Britt plays drums on the first two songs, I think, and I play song on the. I play on the side B. I play drums with them, and Brian McMahon does the vocals on Movie Star. Yeah, he was still like, we were all still part of the family.
Yeah.
And the same thing happened after Slint broke up. Like we all played with Will Oldham because he was part of the family on the Palace records and stuff.
What's the deal with Jennifer Hartman Records? Was that just your guys' label?
Oh no, that was just a girl they knew in Chicago who was like just super cool and could afford to put out this record that Touch and Go actually rejected.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I've talked to Corey about it later. He was like, yeah, I just thought it was too much like Big Black at the time. And it wasn't until we recorded the EP we recorded those two songs that came out as the Untitled EP, that he realized we weren't like a Big Black clone or like worshiping band.
That's funny. Was that like the thing people said at the time when Tweez came out? Because I don't really hear the Big Black thing that much.
I mean, I hear it really, really faintly. I think it's a stretch, but at the time there was Big Black, and there weren't really any other bands like it, and we had a little bit of that sound. And Albini, when he produced it, he gave it some of the sound.
Yeah, I guess that's.
Yeah, Jennifer Hartman she just funded it, and I think Britt made the logo, and it said Jennifer Hartman Records and Tapes, even though it never, she never put out a cassette of it. You don't have a copy of Tweez on the Jennifer Hartman label, do you?
No, that thing's impossible to find. I think. I have the Touch and Go one.
Right. I think I gave away all my copies. I have one that I found in England, like in the '90s, that was cheap, and so I have one copy of the Jennifer Hartman pressing.
It's funny because like I traded away like so many of my band's records at different times. So it's like, people would hit me up and be like, "I'll trade this record that you really want for this," and I'd be like, "Okay, sure." So I'd trade away all this stuff. Now I'm like, God, I gotta rebuy my own band's records. It's such a weird feeling.
Isn't that a weird thing? But yeah, I always gave them all away. Like I'd be like, "Whoa, I've got like 30 copies of this. Like, here you go." Like, everybody got it, and then I end up like, I don't have a copy of. I mean, there's a lot of stuff of my own that I don't have copies of.
Yeah, I think it's like one of those things where now that I have kids, I want to have copies of everything. But at other times, I'm
Yeah,
like, why would I want to have copies of this? I played on it, but now I'm like, oh, so I could pass it on to my kids. That's why.
yeah, I know. You're not looking that far ahead though at that
No,
age, you know.
nope.
Like yeah, you're, in a way, it's cool because you're just totally in the moment, and you feel like it's not. There is no future, or like the future is not worth thinking about right now. Like,
Yeah.
um,
Well, and also that future didn't include like my own band's records being appreciated by me in any sort of way, like it's just
yeah,
like, eh.
exactly. Yeah,
Um,
yeah, because you have the experience of it. So
but then again, like it's funny because like you did keep on, like you're saying you got stuff from Solution Unknown and things like that. Like it's cool that you did at least have the foresight to be like, I need to keep these for my own posterity. Let alone the fact that they've actually become like artifacts.
yeah, yeah, a lot of that was because my mom is like she always wants to save all that stuff. She's impressed by things by like if I were written up in the paper or something, she always saves all that stuff. So,
Mm-hmm.
but the Solution Unknown 7-inch, the first one, I definitely wanted to keep at least like 5 copies for myself um, only because that was the first time that was my first record.
Mm-hmm.
And I was and it was really exciting for me.
Well, and what I was going to say, like when you're doing Solution Unknown and it is overlapping with Slint, did you know at that time that Slint was going to become like, maybe not your career at that point or anything, but like that was going to become like kind of a more serious band?
Well, Slint was always my serious band. Like to me, that was like the band I was in. That was my real band. And Solution Unknown was more, I just did it for fun and to like try to meet girls or whatever. Like it was more like, it was more like a way to blow off steam. But Slint was always like that was where I really put an effort into it and like took it seriously. Uh, to an extent,
Mm-hmm.
I also took it for granted for sure, but I didn't imagine anyone would be talking about Slint in 2018 for sure. Like I remember talking to Britt and I was like, I think in the future, the only people that will even remember Slint will be like these jazz geeks that only listen to like records on Victorolas that will find a copy of Spiderland or something like that. But that I was convinced that would be the only way we'd be remembered. I so that all this is still like just the fact that people know who Slint is now. I'm still pretty surprised.
Well, well, I was going to say, like, what were you
Sorry.
guys? How were you guys received at the time, like, by the people around you?
There were definitely, yeah, there were definitely like our friends who were really into it,
Mm-hmm.
that understood it. But we were also, I think, like the singer from Malignant Growth. I forgot to share a story about Malignant Growth. Like one of the legendary things for the singer was that he I forgot, maybe they were playing with the Necros, and he put up like a metal folding chair in the middle of the slam pit and stood on it and sang the whole set there and dared anybody to knock him off, and nobody knocked him off the entire set. Like, I mean, that's how intimidating these guys were. But, and that guy's amazing. Like Brett Ralph, he runs a record store and like kind of just like books and anything that's pretty hip he sells and at his store. It's called Surface Noise.
Mm-hmm.
That's if you're ever in Louisville, it's worth going there because he's always had good taste. But yeah, I guess like Brett and I guess a lot of people in the scene just thought we were a little too sort of arty and intangible in a lot of ways. Like you couldn't really rock out to us that much. So I think it was a really esoteric group of people that like Slint at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and we knew all of them. They were friends. So.
Well, I guess it's like also that's like the kind of like the main period for Hardcore Rules type thing. Like the bands that would have been touring, I guess, would have been like 7 Seconds, and like it would have been,
Yeah.
you guys would have been definitely a departure from Agnostic Front.
Oh yeah, and we would end up, a lot of shows we would end up playing with these super loud, very masculine bands, and we would be playing this. We looked like we'd be wearing a pair of shorts and like we didn't move around at all. We'd be playing this quiet stuff, and like people just thought we were just like wimps or just super geeks or something. I remember we played at the Pyramid Club in New York on the one tour that we did, and the band before us was called Slaughterhouse, and they had TVs on stage of like fist fucking and bestiality and shit eating and all this stuff. These TVs, and they had two girls playing bass, or two girls in the band that were only wearing their bras or whatever. And the singer vomited on stage and set his hair on fire and all this. And there was a drag club below, and so you'd see like these dudes walking around in wedding dresses, and I was like, man, I love New York. This is awesome. Like, and then we played, and we were like. We actually played really good that night. Yeah. And I remember, like Brian, like cleaning the microphone, really like putting all these like antiseptics on there so the vomit smell wasn't on there, and smelled like burnt hair on stage. But I went to the bar after we played and overheard this girl next to me. She was like, "Did you see Slim play?" Talking to her friend. And she was, and the guy was like, "No, how were they?" And he's like, her description was, "They were too young and too clean." And that's exactly what we were. We were really young and just really clean, like preppy looking almost.
Mm-hmm.
Like
was that a conscious?
We didn't
thing?
fit in with them boxing.
Was that like at the time? No. Was that's like a conscious thing, or is that just how you dressed?
Yeah, it's just how we dressed. Like Brian McMahon was in Meshuggah wearing a pink polo turtleneck, I think. Like, and my friend that was like took him to the show was like, "Man, you got a lot of balls to come to a Meshuggah show wearing a pink polo, like Ralph Lauren turtleneck." And he was like, "If anybody doesn't like it, they can suck my dick," like he just gotten off work. Like he's always been like very clean cut and dressed well, and he's kind of set the standard for us. We had to like compete with him. We were definitely too clean, too young and too clean.
Where did this kind of contrarian kind of like, like obviously, history kind of has judged you differently than the people back then did, but like where at the time, like you guys were standing kind of so in the face of everything else and the way things are kind of going, where did that influence come from, or where did that desire to do that kind of come from?
Man, I think that's like, I don't know if it's a punk thing or like a Louisville thing or what, but like going against the grain is just the way to be. Like, like even when, I don't know if you're like, I don't know, how old are you?
38.
Okay. So you probably don't remember when like, cause like when people started slamming and going in a circle, as opposed to just slamming and going crazy, like we called it the toilet bowl slamming, because I didn't that was like a new thing to me. Like I didn't think that's what slamming was, to like run in unison circle. Like so we thought slamming should just be it's just a personal thing. Just going against the grain, mostly just to amuse yourself.
Well, we could stop here now for now, because I know you said you want to get off at this time to kind of call the kids and stuff, and we can pick it up at another time, man, because I'm having the best time. So, no pressure on that.
Oh yeah, me too.
Dave, thank you so much for coming back on the show.
Oh, no, not a problem. I like the show. So,
Well, I tell you, this is,
yeah.
I was just saying off air, it's one of the few times that I've had a kind of a gap between the start of the show and finishing the show. So I actually went back and re-listened to make sure I wasn't going to, waste your time with a few more questions, of course, that we've already covered. And I went back and it turns out there's a bunch of stuff that I'm like, oh, I'd be kicking myself if I didn't ask follow-up questions about that. So thank you again for coming back on the show.
No, no problem. I hope I can help.
Well, the thing
Yeah.
I got to talk to you about is funny because like I just had Dwid, who's the lead singer of this band Integrity, on, and it turns out he grew up in Louisville, and his first punk show he ever heard because he didn't get to see it was held across the street from his house, and it was Maurice opening for Sam Hain or Sam Juan or however your
Oh,
says
wow.
pronounced,
Yeah.
which I believe you played on, right? You played in that show.
Yeah. I was with them. We did like a small tour with Sam Hain, and that was, I think, the first show with them uh, at a high school. So yeah, that's cool that his first show was across the street from him. That's it's a small town, I guess. Yeah.
He said he could hear it through his window, and he wasn't allowed to go to the show by his parents. But he got as close as you could get without being there.
Yeah. Oh, I know that feeling. There were so many bands before I was of age to get into bars and stuff where I'd have to sit behind just like where the band was playing, sit out at behind the bar, and I would listen to them and totally enjoy it. Like, but also mad that I sneak in somehow.
What
Like,
what what were some of those shows that you would?
that just makes it more provocative.
Absolutely, yeah.
Oh, like that? Um, oh man, there were so many. Like that band Malignant Growth would play. There was one bar where literally the back of the stage was where you could sit outside and you'd be right stage. And like it was like TSOL and DOA, just all these bands I wanted to see but couldn't get in because I was too young. Like even with Maurice, we ended up playing with TSOL at that bar, and because I was 16 or whatever, um, they made me. Like before and after I played, I had to sit outside because I was underage. Um, so that and that yeah, it was kind of weird. But it does make it more like it seems like such a bad thing to do that it makes it more like you have to know more about this world. I'm
Hmm.
sure he had that feeling when he heard Maurice and wasn't allowed to go. It just made him want to be there even more.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think it's funny because Rat actually gave him his name Dwid too. So it's
Really?
yeah, like there's a lot of intersection. He talks a lot about going to Charlie's Pizza and how underage drinking was kind of a thing there, and hanging out with I guess you guys was like a key kind
Yeah.
of entrance point for him to punk rock.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah. It's funny. It's like the Louisville does have like a nickname thing. Like people would just give each other nicknames, and it would just stick with them. Some people I didn't even know. I still don't know their real names. There was Mohawk Dave, Gravy Dave. Uh, there was actually two Mohawk Daves, and then there was Nazi Paul. It's just like just because he'd wear like World War II stuff, and he wasn't a Nazi or anything. He just
Yeah,
was weird.
yeah.
And Mooch, Rat, a kid we called Burnt Cheese, because I guess he'd shave his head, but when it grew out, it looked like somebody said it looked like burnt cheese, and so we just started calling him that. But yeah, there's a lot of like Louisville's just there's a lot of nicknames for people.
Did Maurice like? There's no records that are out there, right? Like there's that demo that got reissued not too long ago. But was that the only thing you guys really recorded?
Yeah, that's it. Like we never went to a studio. I guess I think stuff was happening so fast we just didn't even we didn't have the money to go to a studio, but and usually you had to play a certain amount of shows before you could get enough money to go into a studio.
Hmm.
And we just we as soon as I joined the band, we started playing like local punk shows, and then in Cincinnati as well, like just opening for bands, and then we did that Sam Hain tour, and then we broke up shortly after that, and Slint came out of that, and King Horse when we broke up. So we didn't really have a lot of time. So yeah, I have a bunch of live recordings that have like a billion songs that aren't on that demo, and some of them are really cool, and some of them you can hear the transition to where it's becoming Slint a lot more clear. Like you can't hear it at the Slint in the demo at all, but towards the end of like the stuff we were writing that actually broke up the band, because Rat was like, I can't sing to this shit, you know. He would just, you know, he was like, I don't know what this is, you know, like he was just, I'm out, because I started playing with a clean guitar sound, and was not jazzy or stuff, but more like Minutemen type stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was just too much. Like it did not rock, that's for sure. So he wasn't into it.
Is there ever any thought of you like to put that stuff out there? Because it's amazing. Like, actually, how did that tour with Sam Hain come about? Because they would have been a really big band at that point, I would imagine, like relatively speaking.
They actually weren't that big yet. You know,
Okay.
they were still like, when the Misfits were around, they were still like kind of, they were a popular punk band, but they were not a cool punk band. Like because they sort of have rock starisms that were looked down on.
Yeah.
And and they were really macho, which is also looked down on. You know, like there was a lot of they would pump iron in the van, like they were touring in a van, just a cargo van, like we were.
Yeah.
And so they weren't making. They were doing well for a punk band then, but their audiences weren't anything like after he started Danzig. Like it wasn't like that at all. But that was because Rat was always like, I guess, had seen the Misfits and hit it off with Glenn, and he became like pen pal, and they would write each other and stuff. and I guess at some point he asked, he needed a band Midwest part of their tour, and at some point he asked Rat about his band and to send him a demo. And so we recorded that thing on a jam box and sent it to him, and he was into it. Like I guess the rumor is, and I've always assumed it was true, but I don't know if it was or not. But after Sam Hain broke up, we had started Slint at that time, and I was really into it and kind of outgrown my my desire to rock sort of phase. Yeah. And I had gone, I think I was out or something, and I came back, and my mom had said that Glenn Danzig called for me because, I'd written him letters and stuff, and he'd written back and sent me things. And I was like, really? That's weird. And I called Rat, and I was like, no, why Glenn Danzig would have called me? And he's like, he's starting a new band called Danzig, and he needs a guitar player. And I told him he should call you. And I was like, oh man, I was like, I was so into Slint, like I wasn't interested. I was just like, I don't want to play with him. Like,
those records, if there's any way for the first 3 Danzig records to get more interesting, I think it would be with you on guitar.
That would have been super weird.
It would have been awesome.
I don't see how that would. Yeah. I mean, I wasn't playing like my shredding style and Maurice, I was trying to get away from at that point, with to the more sort of repressed and soulless playing of of Slint. So I was I guess I just wasn't at that phase. But yeah, I would have been if I had stayed in that mindset of like just like a shredder, I would be a different person now for sure.
David, I think the whole history of music would be very different if you had made that decision. I think it would have changed the progression of rock music in a major way, in 2 major ways, I think. But it's amazing how much Danzig kind of intersects with your kind of career, for lack of a better term, right? Like, there's of course the Misfits tribute record that you did, or cover record or
Right.
projects as well. And then there's the famous story involving going to the Danzig show with Slint as well. Like there's just like a lot of seems of intersections with Danzig and
Oh
Danzig's
yeah.
music.
Yeah, I think, definitely Britt and Will Oldham and Brat and I were all just huge Misfits fans. Like, I don't remember if I told you, like, when I first met Will, Rat introduced him as like, he knows the words to every Misfits and Ramones song, like, and, back then that was like, whoa, this guy's all right, but so like, yeah, I guess the Misfits were always like, we're just way into them. And again, like they weren't that cool of a punk band to like. Like if you look at old Maximum Rock and Rolls, they have a running cartoon where instead of a devil's lock, the band has dick. It just has a dick hanging off and hanging in their face, like. And that was because like, the Misfits were known to be dickheads. They were known to be kind of thuggish or whatever.
You hear that comes up a lot, I find.
Yeah, and I actually learned that on the Sam Hain tour. Like I was kind of that's part of the reason why I was never called him back. Was because he was my hero, and he kind of turned me off a little bit on that tour because of that sort of thuggish behavior. Like I was like, that's not cool, like the stuff he would say or do. But like not to trash him, like he also did a lot of stuff that was super righteous. Like we would get paid $30 for a show or something, and he would give us some of his money out of his own pocket. He did a lot of really cool things for us. So I don't want to trash talk him.
No, it's funny though because like one of the things that's kind of become a reoccurring thing on this show almost is that the Misfits are simultaneously at once the greatest punk band ever and also not at all a punk band.
Yeah, and that's kind of what makes me love them even more as I get older. Is just that here's this crazy guy who had a vision from the start. In the middle of like New Jersey, like Lodi is a real like Italian sort of tough neighborhood or like town or whatever, Lodi, New Jersey, and he came out with this vision that he hasn't wavered from. It's just evolved to the kind of Fat Elvis thing now. It's like it's kind of become bloated, but it's he stuck to the same vision his whole life, like, and he pushed for it. He made all the artwork. He played a lot of the instruments on those records. He had the sound. He had it all in his head, the whole thing, the way it should be, like from the start. It's pretty impressive,
Oh yeah, it's like,
and he stuck by his guns, like even when he was made fun of by his punk audience that he had,
Yeah,
he's always stuck to his guns.
and even like the way it's gone, it's almost like he had written it the whole way from the start, and he's like, and eventually it will become kind of a bloated parody of itself because it almost like has to for the fulfillment of prophecy.
Yeah, that's really true. Yeah.
I once again, I've already kept you longer than I said I would, but the last thing I wanted to talk to you about was you mentioned this band last time that you guys had played with briefly, Slaughterhouse, and described like one of the most insane live shows I've ever heard described involving what they did on stage.
Yeah. It was really unforgettable, and it was, and for me, just because I didn't know, I was still figuring out what punk rock was in my own way, I was like, wait, this is, I didn't think it was like, I wasn't offended by anything. I was just like, wow, this is New York,
Yeah.
This is everything I thought it should be.
And it is, sorry, go on. Sorry.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, because if it's the same band that I'm thinking of, the Slaughterhouse, I think they were originally a band from Detroit, but they were like definitely like a real noise rock kind of band, and they have a 7-inch that's called Mommy's Little Panty Waist. That is it is the most disturbing artwork I've ever seen on a record. Like it is.
Oh my God!
It is.
It's got to be the same band.
It's got to be the same band because like the way the show you were describing afterwards, I'm like, I got to find out more about this band. And sure enough, I like looked at this. I looked it up on Discogs, and they were kind of like, were they kind of like punk, but like a darker, gothy kind of like noise rocky vibe?
Totally. Yeah. It was definitely had a goth thing that was kind of removed from everything I was into. But it was, yeah, it has to be the same band. I mean, there's no way if it had that offensive of a cover they were just so into that kind of shock, stomach turning sort of imagery or whatever.
It's
more severe than like the Unsane records that had like car accidents and stuff.
Well, because the Unsane records are definitely disturbing, but like it's almost like that's just like that's something that happened, and they've now exploited or not, depends on your definition, but like taken that and put it on the cover of their record. This is
right.
a photograph of a woman in her underwear duct taped to a wall while a guy in a ski mask puts a knife to her neck and a little kid watching on. And it's a photo.
Oh my God. Yeah, that's gotta be them, man. They had two girls in the band.
Yeah.
So I'm sure they got one of them to
yeah, no, it seems
to duct tape them to a wall.
Yeah, I'm there's no way it's real. Like there's no way it's not a staged photograph. I'm every fiber of my body is hoping. There's no way it isn't. But at the same time, it's still the fact that people would sit down there and be like, what are we going to put to give the world an image of what our band's about out there?
Yeah. So, man, I never thought to, like, I just thought, I don't know what I thought. I just thought they were a band and they didn't have any, like, I never thought to, like, try to find some of their material. That's amazing that you found that, because that totally fits the identity that they were pushing. I mean, they were definitely for real. The singer set his hair on fire, like a lot of hair on fire on stage. He barfed all over the microphone. Like it was, they went all out. Like I can't imagine going on tour and you do that every night. Like
it's like that. Well, that like Gigi Allen, I guess. Like that's there. For every Gigi Allen, there's a million Gigi Allens that didn't make it.
That's right. That's right. That would be interesting to like collect all those people like in a documentary or something. Like, I think the only band that I've seen that was like, I wasn't actually shocked I saw Slaughterhouse. Like I was just, the whole New York experience was just like a sensory overload for a little country boy. Like, so that was like, and I'd seen those kind of videos and stuff already, just because like the Albini and the Touch and Go guy, Shock, whatever band came in and making them watch that stuff. But like, I saw this band and I brought the drummer from the Yeah Yeah Yeahs to see them. They're supposed to be a local, like a Philadelphia black metal band. And I wanted to see them. They're playing this little place. They're called Tomb, and it's like TOMB, but with a dot, like it's initials for something else,
like an type thing. Like in. Okay, yeah, no, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, TOMB.
Yeah,
because there's another bell Tomb, I think. So I don't know what the TOMB stands for these guys, but they, I guess they lit all these candles and stuff, and I was like, all right, this is going to be a black metal, band. And the drummer from the Yeahs, Brian Chase, actually had the wise sense that something's wrong here, and he left and like went outside when they played. And then the singer had like, it was really like ambient black metal. It wasn't like abrasive really. It was just, creepy stuff. But the singer lifted up his shirt and started like slicing himself repeatedly with a razor blade. And you could already see a billion scars on him until he was like just drenched in blood.
Oh.
And apparently he does that every show. I was like, okay, now I think I've seen it all, But this guy, I mean, and you could see like he had like all these white lines of, scars all over his whole body from doing that like repeatedly. It was messed up. Like it didn't help the music, but that's they're keeping it real. That's like.
Well, if the gimmick's good enough, you don't need the music.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. for the visuals. Oh man.
Well, that label Depression
Yeah.
Records that they were on, there's another band, Boom and the Legion of Doom, who when they played with Youth Today, pelted the audience with hunks of raw meat.
Oh man. Oh, that's pretty. That's awesome. I mean, I like that kind of stuff where like the audience, you know, like with gore or something, and the
Yeah.
audience gets covered with fake jizz or blood or whatever, and then but like a friend of mine saw Cool Keith, the rapper, years ago, but she said that he threw out plastic bags that had chicken wings in them and a little wet nap. So like he threw out a bunch of them so people could eat it, and people were eating the chicken and then cleaning the barbecue sauce off their face with the wet nap. Like
That's
like,
my kind of show. Yeah.
I know. Like who thinks of that? I mean, yeah, I thought that was really funny. But that throwing raw mates, that's up there.
David, I can't thank you enough for coming back on the show, man, and taking the time and doing this. And I know we've now done 2 parts technically, but will you come back at some point in the future for a technically part 3, part 2 for the show?
Oh yeah, of course. I'd love to. I'm seriously an old man with a bunch of stories to tell. Like I can't tell my kids these stories yet. So,
well, anytime
I'm glad you're interested.
No, I was going to say, anytime you want to tell story and do a story time, Turned Out a Punk is here because this has been awesome.
Oh, that's great. Well, thank you so much, Damien. You're the best.